voice of growth, mastering the mind and market.
Only 7% of skincare products sold in the US are made in the US. You really have to have a very significant plan if you're going to play on the national scale in such a crowded industry. A quality product or a great formula is step 1 of 12. What they get is a totally finished product that's ready to sell. We're heading into a super volatile time in the industry right now. Our challenge is keeping up with it, essentially. We grew 100% last year. In my company, we're growing so rapidly that there is no AIs replacing people. In the absence of any other evidence, you might as well be an optimist. It makes you happier. There is no substitute for just doing it and learning along the way. My brain's always going to solving the next problem. There's no such thing as a 5-year plan anymore. I don't even know if there's not a 3-year plan. I'm like, I got a 3-month plan. That's my plan now. A 3-month plan, and then I'm going to see what AI is doing and adjust the plan. All right, well, we could chat for hours more about stuff.
Christina, I've known you for a number of years.
Yeah.
And since knowing you, you've always been someone who is very driven, very passionate, very curious.
That's a good word, yeah.
You're always asking questions. And you've been in the beauty space as long as I've known you. What was the reason that you made that journey? Why are you in the beauty space?
Oh, that's funny. I actually totally just fell into it. When I was 19 years old, I got this part-time job in this little hippie lady's company, and at the time she'd been running it in her basement, and she would make these fragrances and tinctures and stuff. And so I was working there like 8-10 hours a week, and we would like hand write the things on, and like we'd watercolor them and tape them onto the bottles and do all that. And eventually I became part owner of that company, and then we really just got super lucky. So we only had 5 wholesale locations. One of them was Bread and Circus in Boston, Massachusetts, which became the first Whole Foods.
Really?
And so our brand just grew with them. So eventually we had like 1,200 locations around the country, and that was all. So then I spent 15 years doing that and basically kind of self-learning how to grow a company from nothing. I mean, we didn't even have invoices or computers or anything when we started it, right? And I always had this idea that I could kind of like educate myself out, or this idea that there was someone else who just knew so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could just like get the right education and do all of that kind of stuff, I would then become one of those people who knew all the things. I went back, I did my master's in business.
Mm-hmm.
From this perspective now, I kind of laugh at it because I'm just like, you know what that is? That's the only is experience. You don't educate your way into knowing the ins and outs of running businesses. You run them. That's what you do.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I ended up there. And then I had left that company, started my Sia Botanics brand, which is, fantastic formulas. But I learned in that process that I really didn't know like the marketing and sales side of the beauty industry well at all. What I had done in all the years in my other company too was the manufacturing side. And so I also just sort of fell into having Craft Beauty Lab, which is really my biggest company now. And that was really just because other brand owners would approach me about wanting to use my formulas in their brands. And so eventually, I just ended up being like, oh, you know what I am? I'm a contract manufacturer. And so that's really 95% of my business now. And Sia is 5%.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a very interesting segue, because a lot of people talk about how branding or marketing is like the cornerstone of a business. But I hear from our research that you believe that it's more the distribution and the upstream stuff that's more important.
Well, I'm sure every industry is its own thing. In the beauty industry, if I knew then what I know now, right? In the beauty industry, there's a real like kind of cap there where it's like you can form a beauty brand And if you are really boots on the ground and you're willing to, do all the shows and all the fairs and go into all of the spas and all the places and things like that, you can typically grow your company to about 250, $500,000. But when you want to go past that number and really get like into, kind of into some of the chains or get into some of the more, like get national, or you really want to break through that ceiling, which is really a very low ceiling, right? You do want to break past that. It's like they say the average brand that actually s breaks past that number and sustains past that into the 2, 3, 5, 25. Then you get, 100,000,000, whatever it is. But they usually spend $3 to $4 million on their like, to get to that point. So there's not it's very, very rare that a self-funded, beauty brand actually goes kind of past being, sort of that local state kind of brand that people, know because it's local. Um so for me, for sure, like when we have clients now that come, or if a client that has not had a brand before comes to us and wants us to manufacture their products, that's the number one question. Is it's not do they have enough money to pay me? It's what's their actual sales, marketing, and distribution plan? Because if they say to me, "Oh, yeah, well, I've hired a PR company and they're gonna do all the Instagram and all that kinda stuff," and I'm like, "That is not going to I don't wanna take your money and have you have a bunch of products sitting there." Like, you really have to have a very significant plan if you're gonna play on the national scale, and it's such a crowded industry.
Sure. Well, I mean, you're dealing with lots of, I'm sure, dozens or hundreds of beauty brands.
Dozens.
Is there a formula? Is there a playbook? If you do this and this and this and this and this, then you get some success? Or is there some certain element that's like not really talked about?
Well, what I have seen, and so, the type of brands that we deal with are, they're still what we would call small brands. They're brands doing, 5 to 25 million a year in business. Um, and there is absolutely no substitute for what I call boots on the ground for the founder for your starting point. I've never seen that. So that's different. Like if you already have private equity and you've already raised $10 million, maybe you play it differently. But if you're not that brand, um, it's if they think that they're going to make a brand and then they're going to hire someone else to do it, or they're just going to do marketing online, it's not going to work that way. They have got to go, like they have to grind. It's a face to face. It's, you got to go into every one of those stores. You have to go, you really have to just put the time in. Um, and then, we what I really see is it's really a unique point of view. It's having I always say this, I'm like, a quality product or a great formula is step 1 of 12. And then I talk to clients and, they'll get super excited. They just got into Ulta, and I'm like, good. Well, you're on step 6, but you're not at 12 because you can lose your shirt going big too in this industry so easily, because just because they're going to place you doesn't mean you're going to sell through. And it's your responsibility to sell through, not theirs to sell you through. And, you'll end up taking back, all their product. They can end up just losing their shirts on that one as well. So a unique point of view that you really, really believe in. But what I see most beauty brands not doing, the ones that don't succeed, is they're scared, or they just don't think of actually really looking at what the industry is. What is your real competition? Who else is out there? Because the brands that I have worked with that have not succeeded, it's because they're so convinced they have this very unique idea. And I've seen so many brands and I'm like, it's not unique at all. It's not a unique formula. It's not a unique concept. It's not a unique, anything. And I guess when I say unique, I should step back, because it's not just unique, because it's to some degree there's nothing new under the sun in the beauty industry either, right? So that's maybe the wrong word. It's really like a real point of view that you hold in your head and your heart, and that you're willing to do that grind for. Like it's not going to be an overnight. Oh, great! I made this product, and now everyone just knows it's great.
Mhm. What is Craft Beauty Lab and what do you do there?
Well, at the end of the day, we're a contract manufacturer. I call us the ugly side of the beauty industry, because everyone always thinks, the beauty industry, and it's always all the, marketing and the PR and the pretty ladies doing things. And, we're closed-toed shoes and hairnets and, equipment and, everything is just process, for that. So what we do is essentially, a client will come to us and they will either, um, bring us a tech transfer, meaning they own their formula, and then we start with a lab trial, which means we'll order little amounts of all those ingredients in, make sure that we can actually make it, and then once they've approved that formula, they can place an order with us. We order all the packaging, order all the labels, order all the ingredients in, do all the formulas, fill, label it. What they get is a totally finished product that's ready to sell. And that's the standard in the industry. A lot of people just don't realize that, which to me seems obvious, is, brands don't make their own products. So, yeah, so that's what we do all day long. Sometimes we are doing custom formulation for clients if they come to us and they don't have the formula that they want. But most of the time, we're actually working off of tech transfers.
And do you do fulfillment or just the manufacturing side?
We do not do fulfillment. So our end process is shipping it out the door, typically to their fulfillment center.
Okay. So I'm sure you're dealing with brands that want their stuff yesterday.
Oh, yeah, of course.
How do you deal with the speed to market, the getting this out the door and profitable for you and for them with doing a good job and integrity?
That's a great question. And I've learned this one the hard way. Let me tell you, because I'm a people pleaser and we're very relationship oriented, and so it's like, when someone wants something, you really want to try to get it for them. But I've definitely learned that when you cut corners in all of those things, something invariably goes wrong, and you're the one that ends up paying the price for it. So the biggest thing to how do you balance that is it's really setting the right expectations up front. It's having the real conversation, which is not like, hey, you placed an order. Okay, your order will be ready in 12 weeks. It's okay, hey, you placed your order. Here's what the process looks like. We're going to go out now and we're going to go to the vendors and we're going to purchase everything. And it will either be in stock or it won't be in stock, or they'll tell us it's in stock and then maybe it also isn't in stock. And so I've learned to really tell them, it's like, I can't give you a completion date. I can give you the estimate, but I can't give you a completion date until everything has landed at my warehouse. And I promise to be proactive in communicating with you. And I know that it can be super disappointing, but that's really what it actually looks like. And as long as people understand what the expectation is and understand why things are happening. I hear all these stories in the industry, and there's tons of fantastic manufacturers in my industry, but there are also manufacturers that will just not call you back for 2.5 months or something after you've placed an order with them. So I try to be really good about explaining to people the why behind things. Right now we're heading into a super volatile time in the industry right now. So my whole next week is going to be nothing but calling the clients and explaining to them what's going on in customs, what's going on with shipping, because it's just suddenly like this domino effect of oh, okay, that was that vendor told us they were shipping it, but then their stuff didn't clear through customs. Now they're not shipping it, and now they're also adding a 25% surcharge on for all the shipping costs, and we go in and out of these waves of just volatility in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I've seen in my time in business, especially having come from engineering. And nothing against my engineering brethren or my accounting friends or people that are new into business that are stepping in from either university, from another industry, whether you're in law going into business or whatever, is they don't understand that it's not formulaic, that it's not you've got all these things that are beyond your control.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love the fact that you talk about the process and you explain the process rather than just say, yeah, it's going to be 12 weeks. You say, well, this is what it looks like. It may be 12 weeks, it may be 10, but it may be 30, depending on what
Yeah.
happens in this frame, right?
Yeah. And I try to include them in the conversation where I'll be like, okay, look, here's what's happened. This is stuck in customs right now. I know you wanted it by the end of this month. They're saying it's going to be here 5:30. Here's our options. We can wait for it. I can go out and I can try to find another vendor for it right now, but we have already paid for that, which means you'd have to be willing to, hold this ingredient and pay for it. Or, I can try to do a substitute ingredient in the lab if that's what you'd like to do, and, which may or may not be quicker than that, but at least they feel like they're getting to have a voice. I think that helps a lot when you kind of give them options, even if they're obviously options they're not going to take.
Right.
You're just like,
So you've been on both sides. Obviously, you're a brand builder with Sia, and you've worked hand in hand with other brand builders. You're also the manufacturer, the contract manufacturer, making the product, formulating, and all that. What mindset would you say is the most important for these brand owners to have? You mentioned a few of them a second ago, but what is like the singular, maybe a couple mindsets that when they're approaching you, how should they
Oh,
be thinking?
yeah. That is because this industry, is especially if you're a smaller brand, this industry is, you know, consolidating a lot right now. A lot of private equity coming in and manufacturers consolidating. They're dropping a lot of their small brands. And so it's really, I couldn't overemphasize that it's all relationship. And so on the brand side, what you can do is really take the time to understand what success looks like for the manufacturer too, right? Because if you're just this unreasonable client who's, you know, doesn't really even understand what they're asking for and why what they're asking for is not great, or you're just constantly pushing on price and pushing on timeline and pushing on this and pushing on that, and you're also a client I'm doing 2,000 units for, well, it's pretty likely I'm just not gonna do them anymore, you know? Um, but so I think that's, partnership, right? It's just like any relationship. It needs to be win-win. And so understanding what a win is for the other person is the key. And that's business relationships, every relationship. It's
Yeah.
not different at the end of the day.
Well, you touched on a nerve there with relationships, especially in the world that we're living now, which is being overrun by AI. So how, first of all, and this is kind of a multi-headed question, how do you deal with relationships in the world of AI when maybe you don't know if you're talking to a robot at the other end of the whatever? And how has AI been involved and will be involved in your industry?
Oh, that's a great question too. I have such a love-hate relationship with AI. um, I haven't gotten to the point a lot yet where I'm seeing like that automation in AI a ton where, my vendors or my clients are trying to push off that way. So I haven't had to deal a ton with that yet, but I am dealing with a variety of things. So in our business, AI as a tool is fantastic. AI can write, fantastic SOPs for GMP protocols for your manufacturing facility. And it can also, like it does, mess everything up. You still always have to have a person
Mhm.
take a look at it. Um, the funny thing that I'm seeing recently, which is the new challenge, is I'm seeing clients who are not formulators and not at all involved in that side of things, sending me they'll send me a tech transfer that it's very obvious to me that an AI program made for them. So they'll just make up a formula basically and then be like, "This is what I want," and then be like super surprised when in the lab it totally fails. And so I'm having to try to figure out, because I don't have a process for that. I'm not used to getting a made up AI tech transfer, and it has a long way to go to being able to do formulas. It can actually provide some like really great research insight. You can give it a formula and say, "Hey, please do the research and let me know if any of these ingredients are incompatible with each other. Did they cancel it? Did the actives cancel each other out?" It's pretty good at that. It's not super good at like, "Hey, give me a green, wash formula that's gonna do this, 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 and that and smell like that." It's not gonna it, like, comes out watery and smelling weird.
Yeah.
Um, but that's also probably only 1 minute away, right? So it's really an interesting time to be in business because it's hard to, like, forget there's no such thing as a 5-year plan anymore. I don't even know if there's not a 3-year plan. Like, I've got a 3-month plan. That's my plan now. A 3-month plan, and then I'm gonna see what AI is doing and adjust the plan accordingly. So yeah, in my industry, for bigger manufacturers, I'm sure that there's gonna be eventually a ton of fantastic, like, better automations and software programs around the managing of, projects through the system, because there's a lot of moving pieces. Every single, ingredient and package and label and fill levels and thises and that's and all the stuff that has to go into it, and there's hundreds of these orders. Um, so I'm expecting to see that. I haven't seen anything available for myself yet. I also do expect that we're gonna have some, really good formulating
Mhm.
software coming out that actually probably is better than most people are. That's still, well, who knows, right? It's like I'm
Yeah.
like, it's still a year or two away. It might be 2 weeks away. I don't know. It's just going so fast right
Yeah.
now. And I'm definitely dealing with trying to do the education piece with the team because I have, some team members that will embrace it and I have had team members quit over it.
Really?
Yeah. Um,
Quit over AI?
oh yeah. Yeah, because I wanted them to run their SOPs through AI to standardize them and make sure that they were GMP compliant. And I got a resignation letter that I'm just a heartless company trying to trying to like use AI for to replace people thinking and this and that and this and that and I mean it's it's easy for me to dismiss it as a certain person with a certain type of personality, but also it's real because team members and employees are just afraid. Some of them are.
Mm.
In my company, we're growing so rapidly that there is no AIs replacing people in my company. But there's still an interesting resistance to it, and I'm trying to figure out how
Mhm.
I support them in kind of becoming
Yeah.
more open minded to it.
We've done a lot of research on AI. It's one of the central pillars that I've been talking about for 6, 7 years, even before ChatGPT was a thing. But we've gotten some elements, people saying that there'll be 95% unemployment in the next 30, 40 years. There's some people that are saying that it's gonna be the other way around, like the Industrial Revolution where, yeah, maybe we don't have people breeding horses and making horse wagons, but they shifted to now making cars and all that. So we have some people that say it'll be like a minimal, if not opposite. I tend to believe it's gonna be like about 30%, 35% employment. So that means that there's gonna be universal basic income. There's gonna be a whole different framework for doing business.
That's interesting. I I don't have a prediction because what I think that's hard is it's always easy when you're in a period of very rapid change to see what is going away and what's dying, and it's much harder to see what's around the corner, what the new thing is that isn't the thing yet, And if you just look at history, it's like, well, it's going to be something. Whether people work in the same way that we traditionally think about them working. Um, I mean, I guess I'm more concerned about rather than like unemployment or universal, wages and things like that. I'm more concerned about people and purpose, like people aren't happy. Our mental health situation of like not having a reason, something you actually contribute. I think that's like so biologically needed.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's probably like a huge piece of like what's going on with the mental health. And as we continue to sort of have that happen, where it's like, well, what value am I providing? What am I and that's our biggest, I think, challenge for us to figure out right now is, the human species or something like that is really doing that, or we're just going to see so much more mental health breakdown.
Big time. There's a whole epidemic of loneliness.
Mhm.
There's people that are struggling to just be part of a human conversation.
Mhm.
You know, we're talking about this before the recording here is, there's some people that just want to be in their room, lights out, on their computer, on their phone, and just get kind of food served to them every once in a while. Order DoorDash, right?
Mhm.
There's people that live that kind of lifestyle, and it's going to grow even more so.
But also, I know I'll say that I expect at some point, even though they're very foreign to us in our age range, that people will gain some sort of social connection and relationship virtually that way. I mean, I don't think that serves no purpose, but people, I don't know. I do believe that we need to be face to face, as well.
Yes.
But I can see that. I mean, I can see my son, on there playing video games and go in his room and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "I'm playing video games with my friends." And I'm like, "Oh, is that?" He's like talking away on his headset with
Yeah.
his friends, and all his friends turn around on the screen and wave at me, And I'm like, "Okay, well, it's not doesn't replace real interaction, but it's not nothing, And it'll just be interesting to see because that younger generation is navigating. They're just going to live partially in the virtual world and live partially in this real world, and
Yeah.
um,
I mean, do you remember the rotary phone?
yeah, oh, yeah.
Remember dial up?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Do you remember not having the internet?
Oh, yeah. I
Remember, like
remember yeah, I
remember
remember not
having, like, a
having the
map, a
internet.
physical map that you'd use to find places?
Yes, I remember getting my first cell phone and then getting rid of it because I had no one to call because it was like, why would I what nobody needs to be called when they're out,
Yeah, so, I mean, we live in a generation where
Mm.
certain things the new generation has no idea that the Yellow Book existed,
Mhm.
right? This big giant book with everybody's phone number in it.
Mhm.
And there's things that they will have that the generation past that will not know. And it's a
I
crazy
know.
time, right?
Yeah, and I think I tend to be because I think it makes sense, in the absence of any other evidence, you might as well be an optimist. It makes you happier. But, like, if you just look at history, of course, there's all these different eras and things that happen, but as a whole, like, just how amazing even the last 100 years have been and things you could never in a million years even have predicted, you know? Like, nobody in the '50s was predicting the internet and then what that would actually look like in terms of this just, like, virtual overlay of our entire world, you know? So, I don't know, I think it is gonna be it's gonna be all things at the same time,
Yeah.
scary and challenging and also incredible and super interesting
Yeah.
for sure.
There is actually somebody who predicted a lot of what's happening now, a guy named Arthur C. Clarke back in the late 50s,
Oh,
actually,
yeah?
early 60s, who talked about we will live in a future where we will have the world's information at our fingertips in a device we carry in our pocket. It's a really cool clip. I'm going to send it to you.
You definitely sent it
It
to
gives
me.
me chills to
I
think
love,
that this
like,
guy
yeah,
made.
reading about things
And the
like
thing
that.
is, people just dismissed them and said, "Ah, whatever," right? And so we look at what's happening now, and with putting 4 people, flipping them around the moon and coming back and all these things happening. I mean, it's kinda crazy how and then the world is just on fire, right? You have the situation in the Middle East, you have our own government, in shambles in some ways. But at the same time, it's the best time to be alive.
It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, right? I think that's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. It's just like it's all happening at the same time, and I think that, they talk about sort of like evolution or periods in history, and
Mhm.
it's like it's not linear. It doesn't go like this. It's like, it can be very kind of just stable and static, and then you have these like shoot points, and we are right in the middle of like a shoot point. Everything is like changing so rapidly right now, and it's, you know, and all things are possible. Like everything becomes more horribly possible, and all the better things become more possible, and it all happens just faster. And for me, I'm like, it's a very fascinating time to be alive, which doesn't make it an unchallenging time to be alive. But I think it's super interesting.
Mhm. You deal with lots of brands that come and go and grow and all that. Is there a brand that you admired that you really thought, "Man, this is a brand that I can stand shoulder to shoulder with, like, I really like that brand," that then fell down that you can talk about?
Um, well, because we're a small manufacturer, I mean, I don't have hundreds and hundreds of clients. I have personal relationships with essentially every client that we have. And, for the most part, they're great relationships, right? So I become personally invested in most of my clients' success. I think that if I have seen really good brands not succeed, it's simply because they didn't have the marketing, sales, and distribution in place. And I've seen some really fantastic ideas, but without the ability to execute on that, and just that realization that it's a different level. It's a very pay to play industry. What it actually takes, but I equate the industry as a whole to basically being the same as like fast fashion. There's always this projection that's happening in each season of what's the new thing, what's the new amazing ingredient, who's the new amazing brand, who's this, who's that. But that's all pay to play. That is not randomly showing up, and just takes a lot of money to.
And so what are the hidden costs that are there? I mean, what's gonna bite you in the end?
Well, I think mostly it's brands thinking that it's gonna be enough to just be like, "Yeah, but I'm paying for, Google and I'm paying for Instagram and I'm doing that and that's gonna be enough." And it's like that's just one very small piece. The behind the scenes is it's really doing all the trade shows. It's forming the relationships with these bigger distribution places and the bigger, stores. But there are definitely some brands, and that's the wrong question for me because if I knew how to do it, I'd do it. Which is, they break through and they have this incredible direct to consumer,
Mhm,
unbelievable base. I mean, for me, that's like absolute gold, right? Like it's so much easier
mhm.
if you can actually do that than to have to go through all the like distribution channels and the wholesalers and the retakes and the all the different stuff that goes on there. Um, but the real answer is I don't know how to do that. If I knew how to do that, I would do it with my own brand.
Yeah, I was amazed when I was working on a brand. Do you remember that was a anti-counterfeit technology?
Oh, yeah.
And I went to this
I forgot about that.
I went
Yeah.
to this beauty show in LA,
Uh-huh.
and I was amazed. There was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of manufacturers, of brands, of and this was just a tiny, tiny fraction of what's out there. I was amazed and blown away at how much activity, excitement, influencers came out of nowhere, and there was a line around the block for them to take pictures with people. I mean, it was a whole, like, lifestyle,
Yeah.
and I was blown away, and that must exist in different industries.
Yeah.
Is there a growth plan or a growth direction where you see this industry going, or is it gonna be more of the same for longer?
Well, it's interesting right now. So what I see right now is that only 7% of skincare products sold in the US are made in the US. Yeah.
7.
Yeah. So that's the big thing I see is that brands that have not been being made in the United States are trying to get a foothold of at least something made in the US, even though they don't like the sticker shock. But now, between all of the different issues going on, the volatility in the world, the cost of shipping, all that kind of stuff, and now all these tariffs and customs, they're not even sure it is less money anymore. So they're really trying to like get a foothold. So, they were saying, I think I was reading that they're expecting that number to go from 7% to 13% manufactured in the US in the next 3 years, which sounds like not a big number, but in terms of actual
Yeah, it's
manufacturing,
double.
that's like a 60% growth rate, right? So, um, that's what I see happening in the industry. So on the manufacturing side, what's also happening is probably because of that number, a lot of venture capital, private equity has come into and these small and mid-sized manufacturers is getting snapped up, snapped up, snapped up because there's so much savings in consolidating, one building, one set of ops to just do all these products. And then what's happening is a lot of these smaller brands, and they're not even that small. They're doing 5 and 10 and 20,000 unit runs, but they're not doing 250,000 unit runs, are getting dropped by their manufacturer. So they'll bring them in, they come in and they just like drop the top 20, the bottom 20 or
And that's a
30% of
good thing
their.
for you.
Yeah. So like right now, what we have been dealing, which is a fantastic place to be, but it's still all kinds of challenges, is just this organic growth that we have, that our challenge is keeping up with it essentially. We grew 100% last year, which was amazing and also very painful at the same time. And we'll be slower this year simply because I don't have a salesperson anymore. I don't have, but we'll still do 30, 40% this year, maybe 50.
Fantastic.
And that's all we can handle. And I get the calls at least every 3 or 4 months from legitimate, hey, we're interested, hey, are you interested in selling? Are you this? Are you that? They're um I'm not in that space right now, but it's just fascinating. It's a good time to be in this industry, to be manufacturing. But it's also an incredibly challenging time because everything is volatile. So we're hit with all that same stuff, all these tariff changes, all this, the oil prices going up, the shipping costs. I mean, we ship things out every day out the door that is just it costs us $6, 7, $8,000 just to ship the dang shipment. You're like I'm like buying vehicles all day long at the cost of just shipping. And 2 years ago that was $3,000 or $2,500. And so yeah, it's an incredible time of opportunity and also really challenging to have stability, to really be able to do accurate predictions and things like that, because it just feels like every few months you're just hit totally out of left field with something that you could not have predicted.
Right. We did a quote for the company I run to ship something to South America. And when we did the project initially, we quoted it was about 4 months ago, 5 months ago, and the shipping was $7,000. Okay, it's
Mhm.
great, whatever.
Yeah.
But it has to be flown. It can't be on a ship or whatever. It has to be
Uh-huh.
flown on cargo. It can't be flown on a passenger,
Mhm.
which is how they sneak a lot of stuff in, whatever.
Mhm.
And we got a quote for 25,000.
Yeah, there you go. That's what it's looking like right now.
Literally the same. Nothing changed except the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because, this whole the tariff situation is this huge thing too. These, like all those things happening and then the shipping on top of it, which is all the oil, prices going up and everything. Um But, like, I don't understand how tariffs, help us in the United States as a manufacturer, like, theoretically, it's supposed to but I'm like, it's not like they're paying for it, they just add that cost to what everything I order when I need to order
Yeah.
stuff in order to manufacture. They're just adding that price to my cost, it's not like they're paying for it or something like that, so, yeah, it's pretty crazy, and customs is crazy right now, so, like, this industry, the next I mean, it's probably gonna be the whole rest of the year because it's just backing up. So they just changed regulations and customs. I don't know if that has to do with the volatility in the world right now too, but, they went from where, like, say, packages under $800 coming into the US, they were inspecting, like, 2% of them. That's gone to 20%. But what that equals is this massive now it's like started with this slow slowdown, but it's like one of those horrible traffic jams where now it's just like everything is so backed up. And now some of my shippers won't even ship. They're like, "We're not gonna ship because it's gonna go sit." It's not even gonna be able to get unloaded off the ship until, so now, like, everything is just kinda, like, grinding to a halt. If you need to get things from overseas, it's becoming really difficult, and it's going from a week delay to 2 weeks delay to 2 months delay, and it's like, "This is not
That's
good."
it's not good. It's not good for business, and
No.
certainly there's these geopolitical levers that people are leaning on that I don't personally believe that they're useful or helpful for everybody, but
Yeah, it's
politicians and
I know, it's trying to figure out every piece that's in that puzzle, and I just, I'm like, I don't even pretend to understand it all. I like to hope, but I don't feel that hopeful that there is someone there that actually, is thinking about all these various puzzle pieces and how they're impacting each other, and I'm not necessarily convinced of that either right now, but
remember that cell phone you talked about?
yeah.
First cell phone?
Uh-huh.
If you could call yourself when you about the time you had that first cell phone,
Ouch.
what would you tell yourself about your journey?
Oh, interesting. Um, I would tell myself I would tell myself what I said earlier, which is there is no substitute for just doing it and learning along the way. If you're constantly, like, thinking that you need to get more education or more this or more that till you're gonna be, like, worthy or not have imposter syndrome for something, it's just never gonna happen. There's always, always, somebody who has one more degree, somebody who has more years of experience, and it's like, just do it. And I also tell myself to stop people pleasing so much and do the things I actually wanted to be doing and not, what other people wanted me to be doing.
Yeah, those are some lessons.
Yeah, oh, yeah, there's always lessons. So you learn at this age, you're just like it's funny because 'cause I'm sure that I know, 1,000% more than I knew in my 20s, but it's like every single thing I learn, it just makes me more aware of how much I still don't know now, you know?
Have you ever thought about, quitting?
Oh, yes, I have. I have thought about quitting. Quitting is not in my nature. I definitely have. I have hit points, COVID would have been an easy one. We got very, very caught out with COVID, and it was an incredible struggle for probably 2.5 years, to really, like, get this company sort of back on its right footing, and, it would have been easier to quit at some points than others, but one is I could always see that with enough time and effort, that there was a way out of whatever the different situations are. And then it's interesting because businesses sort of they end up with a life of their own where it's like, well, my quitting isn't about is this what I want to be doing or not doing? It becomes about, well, what about all of my employees and team members, these people, who have, one, bought into the vision I sold them, and two, make their livelihood off of this. And then also, my clients where it's like, oh, like some of my quitting would equal some of my clients actually going out of business too. Like I know there aren't other manufacturers that are going to do this and do that and stuff like that. And so it is interesting, something you don't think about when you start a business particularly, but it's its own thing and you're just a piece of it.
Yeah, I think, people on the outside that don't run a business or aren't at that C-suite or the executive level, they perhaps don't understand that there's a lot of personal duty to being
Mhm.
successful,
Yeah.
and, there's the idea as CEOs, right? We take all the blame and we give all the credit to our employees and those that really matter, right?
Yeah.
Something goes wrong, it's on my shoulders,
Yeah.
which seems like insurmountable to some people, but for us, we're just kind of used to it. I mean, I've had conversations where things have fallen apart, and I just step up to the table and say, "Yeah, it's my fault."
Yeah. Well,
Even though it might have been somebody else's fault, I take the blame.
yeah, and that is what it looks like, and that's why, it's so important, and I know, we all talk about that when our various things, but, like, really, having those masterminds or those groups of people that you get together that are also, doing the business ownership and running businesses and stuff like that, because it's not that's not what their job is, but it's not what employees don't think to do that. They don't come in and go, "Oh, hey, Christina, I noticed you did a really great job yesterday." Nobody's ever telling me that in my business. One time, though, they actually did give me a card for Boss's Day it was, and it was, like, the sweetest thing ever. It's actually the sweetest thing I've ever gotten from my team. Um, but yeah, it's just, there's just you start to feel very alone there, because it's totally true. It's like
It's thankless, but it's also fulfilling. I wouldn't want to do anything else.
no, and eventually you're just not suited to doing anything else
I'm
either.
unhireable to some
I made
degree.
myself
I
unhireable.
couldn't do. I'm not sure if I could be a sales guy again or an engineer for sure. But I love leadership.
Yeah.
I love leading teams.
Well, and that's the real thing at the end of the day, like, love problem solving, but it is I have to watch myself with that thing too. They talk about like, well, always appreciating the wins and things like that. And I'm not great at it because my brain's always going to solving the next problem, and trying to really get better at that in my company for my team's sake. So it's not just like, hey, we worked for 6 months really hard on fixing this thing and we fixed it. And now at the next meeting, I'm just bringing you the next thing I want us to fix, instead of being like, wow, we really did that. But it's something I have to practice because my brain is so trained to just look for what's the next weak point, what's the next problem, what's the
Well,
next
that
thing.
makes you incredibly successful at what you do because you're able to do that.
Makes me moderately successful at what I do.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation, Christina. Every time we have these,
I know, it's been too
maybe not
long.
in a podcast setting,
Yeah.
but just either wine or coffee or whatever, I always get inspired and really admire you and your story. And I'm really excited to see what happens in the next 3-5 years.
Me
I
too.
mean, maybe 3-5 months.
Right.
But especially with your industry, I mean, I've tracked you since we first met, and I've seen your kind of struggling through COVID, and then afterwards, and now having
And we
100%
finally hit the
growth.
tipping point, by the way.
Right.
We really have, like, nailed that next step finally. It's taken longer than I thought it would, but that's really fantastic. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Have you ever had anyone interview you on your podcast?
I've had people ask questions from time to time. Yeah, of
You
course.
should you should be interviewed too, because your story's super fascinating.
Yeah. Matter of fact, we're going to be doing a handful of podcasts where I'm the guest.
Good.
Basically, other people that are had their own podcasts. And I love being on both sides of the microphone. I mean, or on both sides of either the host or the guest,
Mhm.
because I believe that as human beings, stories need to be told so that we can really grow from them. We can read books, we can take courses, and the second best thing we can do is hear stories. The first thing we can do is make the stories.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a great I love that.
And
That's gonna
that's
stick
the
in my
beauty of
head.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
Cheers.
That was fun.